So, a big question people ask me a lot is really, how did cars make me rich? Well, cars themselves didn't. Finance did, and the money behind the cars. That's one of the big reasons that I talk a lot in Exotic Car Hacks about the power of understanding the money that fuels these cars more than the cars themselves. While a lot of you guys may argue that, like, oh, this is a great M4, it's beautiful, it's this, it's that, it's my favorite car, I don't look at cars the same way. I look at every single cars as basically the financial opportunity that it either provides or the liability it is or becomes. Every car basically has some level of equity in it if you're buying them low enough. But also to be noted that every car can become a liability if not bought properly. So there's a lot that goes into the financial data of cars that basically allows them to either become assets or liabilities, and basically it enables that margin or that profit to become what dealers do, right? For me personally, in 2007, basically, I started not buying and flipping cars, not a dealership or anything else, but rather the opportunity to create an investment firm that basically took watches and cars and made them basically become an alternative asset for investment, meaning that not in the sense you would think of. So I didn't create a fund that allowed people to go in and buy a stock into a car or a position of a car. I didn't create basically partial ownership of a car. Instead, what I did is I said, we're going to buy these cars, and we have a unique proprietary way of getting these cars that people couldn't get at the time, and they're going to go up in value. And so people said, well, I want to in on the uptake of the value, but I don't have $4 million to buy this car. I don't have $2 million to buy this car. I don't have $1 million to buy this car, but I have 200 grand. What can I get? And so basically, instead of saying each person would buy a car and they would basically invest in it and I would make money selling the car, instead what I did is I basically organized the opportunity for multiple people to come in and basically ride the uptake of the asset basically increasing in value, even though they didn't have enough money to float the entire asset by themselves. So 4 people would come in together, $250,000 a piece, and basically would take $1 million investment, right? And collectively together, they were in this same particular car, and whatever the uptake would be, they had basically an agreement to what it would earn them. So, I created that fund, and it didn't do very well when it first started, but then came the crash of '08. And you see, in 2008, one of the key things was that a lot of people were pulling money away from banks, right? Just like we're going to see soon, people are afraid of how fragile the entire economy is. And I think if you're young, you may not understand this, but if you're older and have been through a couple of recessions or basically a couple of financial issues that the economy has had, you basically understand that a lot of the concepts that we're running on today, for example, look at what's happening right now with this crazy ass virus thing going on. You can look at the entire economy and say, oh, well, people are unemployed, etc. But the underlying issue that perhaps we're not talking about enough is the fact that airlines are going out of business after just being closed for a week. So how do you run a multi-billion-dollar business not even having more than a week reserve? Well, you don't, basically, and you're only functioning on the basis that it works. Like if you look at the hospital business, we complain that healthcare makes a lot of money when they shouldn't. But then look, when you have less than 10% of the population sick, you still can't even withstand 5% and just run normally. So what I'm trying to say is basically these systems are built on very thin layers of reserves that basically can't really support a mass catastrophe. And so what's happening is that a lot of industries in 2008, including the banking sector, became that. And it was that until recently when they decided to again go back to their old ways, and they were allowed to by the administration. So basically, if you look at all of the things that are happening in the market, you can basically look back at what was happening to the banks back then and realize that this is happening to everybody now, because basically revenue flow has ended for a lot of people. So here's the way basically it's going to work. So if you look at in 2008, people were scared to put their money in banks, let alone not in stocks. I mean, leave it in banks, because they didn't even know if the bank was going to be there next month. So, people were always taking out their cash, trying to park it in their mattress. But you can only park your cash in mattress for so much before you start realizing that all this money's out of your pocket. It's just sitting there. It's risky. So you can't just leave all the money at home. What if you get robbed, right? Even if you have a vault, what if someone knows you have 200-300K sitting at home? So basically what you did is you pulled it out and you put in alternative assets. So you looked for watches and cars that could basically park your money temporarily that wouldn't lose value. This is something that you may have heard people do when they invest in gold. They go, well, gold goes up and down, but basically I know the baseline, if it's low enough, is safe, so I can put my money there, it'll go up, and then I'll pull it out and go back into other, basically, stocks or equities or whatever else. So the concept was really simple. I took advantage of the fact that basically people wanted a place to park their money. And since I was a banker for a long time, I had a long list of clients who were looking for those places. And so I gave them the opportunity to basically take their money, park it into cars, and still earn something, despite the fact that a lot of people in that market in 2008 were basically saying, you're lucky if we don't charge you to keep your money here. So, this mentality basically allowed people to protect themselves against having to keep cash at home, and also protect themselves against the baseline of leaving it in a bank they didn't trust. And so giving people that opportunity gave birth to my company, VIP Motoring, which basically became an investment opportunity in alternative assets like watches, cars, and art. And it kind of grew over time. We limited it to just 40 clients. We had a long waiting list of clients who wanted to come in, but we never scaled it really high because of basically what's happening in the economy today. If you look at a lot of things happening on the internet right now, you'll hear of a lot of well-known real estate investors basically panicking because all of their money is tied into real estate that's overvalued, and they basically can't get out of it based on the debt. So they're laying off people, they're being very predatory and afraid of what's coming. So they're basically trying to deny the crash that's happening because they don't want their investors to panic and all pull out at the same time, right? And basically one of the things that's prevented me from being in a position where I would lose that much money should something like this happen is that I was never overinvested. I never took on too many investors where I couldn't afford to pay them personally back, and I always paid myself last. So it created basically this huge buffer of cash reserve that enabled me to not only function but easily scale back or scale forward without actually positioning investors at any type of risk. Now, that company still operates and runs for me, and it's been not only lucrative but profitable and going very well for now. I want to say since 2000, originally started in 2005, evolved in 2007, and basically I retired from it in 2011, but I've owned the company ever since, and I've had a CEO run it up until this year, and I'm going to continue to for another year or two before going to a different model. But basically that's how I got into the car market very early on. And a lot of people don't realize that. They think I'm a marketer, I come on the internet space and I'm selling a product. Basically, they don't understand that what I'm selling at Exotic Car Hacks is basically the byproduct of the 20 years of experience doing this, basically done in a do-it-yourself at home model that's listen, you don't need to invest in other people's cars or trying to ride the waves. You can actually drive the assets and enjoy them. And so you can reframe the entire way you look at cars and no longer look at them as a liability, but understand why leasing and all these things are scams, and basically where your opportunity is to find massive success doing this, which comes from the idea that you can identify the right models, the right cars using the same algorithms I've created to position yourself for a win in the long term. So if you understand that, then basically you start realizing that Exotic Car Hacks is basically a financial tool more than it is a car ownership platform. It's more of a financial tool to educate people on how to leverage their cars without having to rent them, without looking at just starting a dealership or anything else, but rather understanding how the original loopholes and the original models of supply and demand change based on the cars, manufacturers, models, and so on and so forth, and how to position yourself for financial wins despite what you choose to drive. So if you understand that and more, you'll find a lot of success in this game. And basically that's kind of the beginning of how I got started. Now I teach that, and there's a completely free training you can take. You can click the link in the description. It'll take you to this free basically 90-day training I put together that basically explains how during economic downturns you can position yourself to win in the car market. So I've done this for quite some time. I basically built a business off of the 2008 recession, and it's now basically an opportunity for you to learn how to do the exact same thing now that we're in 2020. So click the link below, take the free training. Hopefully it opens your eyes to what car hacking is, and at some point or another, I know you'll get to actually join Exotic Car Hacks and participate in the discussion and the community that's been ongoing now with almost 10,000 people, which is pretty impressive and awesome to see all around. So anyways, hope to see you guys in my community, and otherwise I hope you've enjoyed the history lesson on how all of this got started.